Heyo, welcome everyone to episode 99 of Today in the Scene. I'm Joe with Indie Arcade Wave, and I just want to say thank you for checking us out. If you like what we're doing here at Indie Arcade Wave, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us a ton. The wave will keep growing, and we can all ride it together. So this week we're going to be diving into another indie. I know we talked about crab volleyball last week, which is an awesome indie. We're going to step away from the arcade for a minute, and we're just going to go straight up indie PC. And we're going to talk about a game that I've been playing for a couple months now. I met these guys locally at 2DCon. It's a little convention in Minneapolis. And the game is super fun. The game's called Terramachi. It's a card battling monster game that's kind of hard to describe because it takes a lot of elements from other games. But let's just have Pat kind of dive into this. How you doing today, Pat?
Hey Joe, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I'm happy to talk about the game again. Finally. Um, but the second I played this game, and I don't give this out lightly, I was having a ton of fun. Like, I loved the game. I thought it was super cool, super fun. And I didn't even play it at 2DCon. I didn't play until I got the alpha off of your guys' Discord, which if you want
Oh,
to try out the game, you can jump on the Discord right now and get that. I'll put the link below. But um, let's just jump into you, Pat. Like, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know it's you and Drew who are the development team, and Drew is in Brazil on his way back from Brazil, something like that.
yeah,
So we're
Travis.
gonna we're gonna talk to you about the game, and then we'll bring him in on another episode. So just introduce yourself.
I'm Pat. I'm the game engineer for Terramachi. Also, Real Nice Labs. This will be our first game. As Joe said, Drew not with me today, traveling. He's the other half of the game. So I do the game engineering. We're all Unity, and Drew is the server guy. He's our back end whiz. He does a lot of our kind of more business side dealings. Any sort of contract stuff we have to do. He's sort of pulling those strings. Um, so yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. The game. So what is Terramachi, and what should players expect when they start playing this game? I'll throw some gameplay footage so they can see what's happening, but just kind of describe the game to us.
Sure. I suppose in a sentence, it's a sort of monster-based roguelike card-playing auto battle game. So it draws a lot from Pokemon style games where it's evolution-based monsters, all based on different types of elements and animals and stuff like that. So you basically start the game drawing cards of different types of monsters that we call machi. And as you progress through the game, you kind of get more and more, sort of dangerous and higher ability monsters that you build your team with and evolve. You can play items to and, buff them. And then you send them into battle where you play against other online players. And your teams basically just auto battle it out, and you kind of just get to sit back and watch your team play out. From a low level, someone who's not familiar with the game, you can certainly get away with just sending in a team of guys that you like and just watching it play out. And, the last monster standing, that team wins. But as you start to dive a bit deeper into the game, you start to find some of the strategy of just synergy between the monsters, because the battle is all ability based. So different monsters have a unique ability that will trigger either in battle or in the staging scene where you're playing your cards that could have an effect like, when you get hurt, you do something, maybe grants HP to the guy behind you. And where you can really start to get crazy with your teams then is that guy behind him could have an ability that is designed to trigger off of that guy in front of him. So guy in front, when he gets hurt, he heals the guy behind him. That guy, when he gets healed, he does damage to the enemy team. So what you can try to do is start to build these teams that, kind of have these crazy strings of abilities just going on. And by the time you get to some of the later turns, and the other teams are doing that too, all of a sudden sparks are flying and, it's just animation triggering after animation. You sort of get that, what any gamer is looking for, which is, just animations flying off the board. And you kind of get the satisfaction of building a team that does well. So you're playing against, it's an asynchronous multiplayer game. So when you go into battle, your team is basically getting uploaded to a server that other future players will play against when they're on that turn. And you're drawing you're drawing from other online players that are probably more matched to your skill level. But then we do also have live online multiplayer where you can create a lobby and play with your friends. We just released an update where you can add friends to a friends list and you can build lobbies. You can do tournaments and stuff like that. And then down the road, once we've established a bit of a player base, we'd really like to have, sort of matchmaking, ranked modes, and we've got a whole list of stuff planned as long as we can, get the player base to get there. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the game's fun. The way it's laid out is really good. I'm glad you guys have a lot of plans for the future. Obviously, even just since I've played it last, I took a vacation. You guys have done a ton. You've updated a whole bunch of different things. You've added new features to the game, and you guys are really working on it. So let's go back to the start. Like, where did this idea come from, and how did you guys bring it all together?
Sure. So I suppose to take a step even farther back than when we came with the idea for a game, Drew and I met 6 years ago now at our first software jobs, our first day at the same company, and 6 months after starting that job, we were building small Android games and stuff at my house, and then so over the course of the last few years, as we both worked different jobs, we would still every once in a while we'd sit down and say, hey, we've got an idea for this game, let's try making it. And most times we would just end up getting busy or just sort of can it, decide we just weren't really ready yet. Fast forward to now this past fall, getting close to a year ago, we were having a Friendsgiving celebration at Drew's house. And, towards the end of the night, it was just Drew and I and a couple of friends. And Drew and I sitting across from the table with each other start sort of like coming up with ideas for what we think would be good elements from a game. I think what a lot of game developers do, and really artists of any medium does, is sort of take really great successful elements from certain games and see how it could sort of mix and match with elements from other games. And then, the magic obviously then being your own, sort of take on those things as well. So at that Friendsgiving, we sort of started spitballing back and forth saying, oh, what if we did this? And, it had this and that. And it sort of just turned into this firestorm of us getting really excited about it. Like, oh, yeah, I think this is a really great idea. All we have to do is just actually figure out how to execute. And so we said, okay, we're really busy right now. Let's wait a month. And then over the Christmas break, we're going to sit down and we're going to start building this thing. And so after that first initial dev session, we're like, okay, next step is obviously how do you see it through and stick with development, and so we decided, okay, every other weekend, Drew's going to come over to my house and we're just going to buckle down and do nothing but just work on this game. And we stuck to that. And so every weekend since this very beginning of this year, Drew has been on and off at my house working on this game. And he's working his day job, basically, keep both of our lights on and fund the development. And then I'm able to do it full time. And so, yeah, so it's definitely a grind. I mean, like you said, you were just out of town for a couple of weeks and we've added a bunch of stuff. I mean, we're really just grinding on it and trying to make it happen. So, yeah. And so I suppose to go back then and talk about just the ideas for the game, Pokemon obviously being a big influence, just in the way that monsters are designed, and just the whole idea of evolution and different element types. I think both of us, as 90s kids who grew up with Pokemon, I'm maybe this is blasphemous to say, I know, to a lot of Pokemon fans, but personally feel that a lot of the charm that was initially there in the first generation of Pokemon was sort of, I won't say lost, but certainly faded, I think, as time went on, with the newer generations. And so I think what we were trying to do with coming up with the ideas for the monsters and just the overall design was sort of trying to recapture some of that approach, even if we can't capture the real magic that, like, I don't think we're expected to go and just create Pikachu all over again. But taking that sort of more organic approach and like personable approach to the monsters, where we feel that approach from Pokemon started to get a little bit more mechanical over time. So I think part of that is looking at monsters and sort of, giving them some personality and more intention in the design and stuff like that. And, don't just, no filler, really, I think is part of what we're after. And that really just goes for our game design approach overall too. We don't want to create shovelware or, just filler games to put out there, just make, what is worth making. Then I suppose is from a more gameplay sort of angle, then there's obviously the card playing roguelite genre as a whole. So I think Slay the Spire was probably my first experience with those style of games, which then Monster Train, and then similar in that vein, then there's a game called Super Auto Pets that Drew introduced me to. That was like, okay, there's a lot of cool stuff about this game. It's definitely a very simple design, but that's intentional, and I think they do it successfully. It's just a different approach to game design than I think what we're going for. So I think as far as the gameplay goes, with creating a team and playing against asynchronous other teams online, there's a lot of influence from that game, certainly. And then, so it's sort of got elements of that mixed with, the whole Pokemon aesthetic and like evolution design, mixed with, some of just the classic card playing, like roguelite elements of, drawing cards, random chance, stuff like that. So going on a roguelite run, start to finish, and sort of, playing with the cards you're dealt, literally. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. The whole idea behind it, the influence is very clear, and I think it came out really well. You guys did pick really good elements from different games. Who came up with the monsters, and what's your favorite one?
So the monsters, well, I think we've got 76 all included right now between base monsters and evolutions. That was sort of a long process where the first 5 months of development, we didn't have any of the art that you see in the game right now. And so we're working with, just like filler, like placeholder art and just building the core bones of the game. And then, finally, what we were really looking for was just a really good artist to, make the stuff for. And it was hard to just find someone we just thought was just okay, but still sink the money, what limited, financial resources we had into something that was also just going to be placeholder. So we had some monsters in for a while that Drew had drawn. He's got a design background. I think before getting into software, he had gone to school for graphic design. So he had a bit of a knack for that. I think he and I both, just as developers, vibe in the sense that we're not just programmers. I think we both have an eye for design and UI, UX overall. So as we started getting into the phase of, having to come up with, our own original designs, it's time to move on from the placeholder art, get something in that is ours so we can start sharing it with people. And so we kind of had we started creating a lot of different tools. So like I'd mentioned, Drew is kind of the back end whiz. So he's good with servers and, quick, building websites, stuff like that. So he built some tools that we started using to try to just like come up, like auto generate, mix and match. We would create these big lists of like, what if, you mix this element with, this animal mixed with this sort of characteristic. And, we got some okay ideas from that. But I think overall, the majority of what we went with now were mostly designs that were come up with intentionally. And so we split that load a lot of the way. And then as we sort of got the ball rolling, I kind of went back to, hard building the game, keeping that ball rolling. And Drew was, kind of coming up with a lot of combinations. And basically at that point, we had found a sketch artist. And so coming up with those ideas, and he's sending them to the sketch artist. Sketch artist comes up with something, sends it back, a couple back and forth of just revision and sort of like just kind of pushing him in the right artistic direction of the style we're looking for. Because we want something that looks hand-drawn. We don't really want the sort of, there's a lot of 2D games that really have the sort of vector art look. But we really wanted to capture the sort of hand-drawn look that almost like, old Pokemon cards would have, where it's a hand-drawn look with maybe sort of like a watercolor sort of feel. So we found a really good sketch artist then that, Drew is communicating with and kind of coming up with more monster designs and stuff like that. And this guy was great. So he's coming back with stuff that is like, okay, yeah, that's, it's really awesome to pitch an idea to someone, be like, hey, this is like what we have in mind for this. Here's kind of some reference material. And it comes back like, okay, yeah, that's awesome. That's pretty much exactly what we were looking for. So we have that sketch artist then who we get the stuff from once, like Drew's gone back and forth with him to kind of get the vision sort of refined. That then goes to another artist that we had found that is an illustrator. So she has done all the coloring of the monsters in the game. So she had kind of, we had told her the style we were going for, and she had come back with a couple different samples. One that was, I think she had done a literal hand-drawn like watercolor by hands. and then a digital version of that. So using I don't know all the details of, I've never done the actual digital pencil drawing, but doing that same sort of style but digitally. And so that's the version that we went with. And so that puts us at 76 monsters now. We would like to launch with 100. I think we're definitely kind of pausing where we're at just to make sure that I think keeping a sort of intentional and restricted scope for periods of time can be really useful. So, just focus on the base game, focus on the monsters we have now, make them all work really well together before spreading ourselves too thin and adding too many. And then, just start with a good base and kind of build from that. But we're really happy with what we've got now. I think it was, you asked what my favorite monster was. I think it was one of the first ones we probably got back fully finished. We would get big batches of sketches from the sketch artist, from a lot of the monster ideas that then we would send to get colored. And I think one of the first colored ones we got back, that was actually our first original, piece of art that we owned that we were going to have in the game, I think was Grubble, and it just grabbed me. And I was like, wow, okay. It was a really exciting moment because it's like, okay, this art is really appealing, with a game like this, no matter how much work here I put into building the bones, between the gameplay, the server, that can all, be technically perfect. But if the game doesn't look good with something like this, it just doesn't work. So I think that was a really exciting moment, whereas, the vision was starting to realize itself. So I think maybe there's a bit of bias for how much I like Grubble then, partially because of that, because it's tied to this really exciting moment of, getting some of the art back and realizing like, okay, well, this is starting to materialize a bit. But also I think just sort of embodies the, I don't know, just the cuteness aspect that a lot of Pokemon had. I think we like to, part of our design approach was sort of having a healthy mix of guys that are just cute and adorable, but you got to send out to battle anyways, and then, some just more badass guys that, are just going to like chew up everyone else. So sort of having that balance, I think, just aesthetically, but then also from a gameplay perspective, having both of those style of monsters serve their purpose in terms of the game. So, just having guys who just are meant to chew up the other team isn't necessarily going to, win you games, at least in terms of the whole scheme of a run. You're going to need guys that are going to help scale your team along the way, that are going to grant buffs to other team players. And a lot of those smaller, cute guys are a little bit more about that. They're a little bit more about being team players and helping the rest of your team. Whereas, the big, aggressive guys are a little bit more just about, getting KOs and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, that said, I don't, there's maybe only a handful of ones that we just, I wouldn't say don't like at all, but there's definitely a good few that I think, as we get later down the road, closer to full release and we're getting a lot more made, that will probably maybe get replaced with new versions. But yeah, so I suppose that's a really long runaround answer for which one is my favorite, but I guess I'd have to go with Grubble purely from an aesthetic standpoint, not necessarily my favorite ability player.
I mean, I think he's one of my favorites. He's definitely on like my main team just because of his passive, like that shield is so busted. Like if you get it at the right point and you evolve him fast enough and he starts spreading it out to the whole team, like it is just busted. So, and I think you guys did a really good job of capturing what you're saying. Like you wanted the early evolutions, just like Pokemon, to be cute and like aesthetically pleasing. And then the third evolution or the second evolution, whatever it be, they look badass. They look like fighters.
Right.
You want to take them into battle. So
right.
I think you guys did a really good job of balancing that. And I don't want to go too long with this because obviously I want to bring you guys back on to do a little bit more of a conversation about like the back end stuff, more technical stuff. But what are your plans for the game in the future? Like what are a couple features that maybe you want to tease now that you really want to put in the game?
Sure. I suppose without just actually diving into logistics of, timing and the roadmap and stuff like that. But as far as some features that we have planned that just for whatever reason aren't ready to introduce yet, a lot of it is around the online modes. Like I mentioned, like we just pushed out our 0.5 update a couple of weeks ago that is introducing a lot of social features. So like I said, adding friends lists, creating lobbies and stuff like that. And I think there's just a lot of room to play with game modes around stuff like that. So as far as online game modes, I mentioned having a bigger player base. We would really love, I think I think there's a space to have some sort of battle royale mode where maybe you get put into, I don't know, just a 100 person lobby or something like that, that you go and matchmake into, and then you lose one battle and you're out. Just kind of classic battle royale rules I think could work with this sort of game. But then we also want to do, ranked modes with actual matchmaking and stuff like that, because all the live online right now is just, inviting a friend and playing against your friends, which is really fun. But, certain things just require an established player base first to do. So those, ranked competitive modes, battle royale, stuff like that, stuff we're really excited for.
Yeah, I love to hear the plans for the future, and you guys have a pretty good player base already of just one convention showing the game off. You got, I mean, I feel like there's a good 150, 200 people in your guys' Discord. You definitely can go check that out. Anybody that's watching, the game is on there right now. You can play it, give it a try, and then you can tell Pat exactly what you think about it, whether it's good or bad. But I just want to say thanks for coming on, man. I do really appreciate you coming on to talk about the game. Terramachi is super fun, so go get in the Discord, check it out. And we'll see you back here for episode 100 next week. Thank you for coming on, Pat, and until next time, peace.
Thanks, Ben.